Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Necessity of Tomorrows, featuring Tarana Burke and Nadya Tolokonnikova, moderated tonight by Jenna Wortham. I'm your host, Kim Brown. We'd like to welcome all of our friends who are watching us tonight on Facebook Live, on the Baltimore Museum of Art's YouTube channel, and at bmatomorrows.org. So before we begin tonight's dynamic conversation, we're going to start with a special performance from JOJO ABOT, which is in part inspired by tonight's program and the Baltimore Museum of Art's 2020 Vision Initiative, celebrating female identifying artists. So who is JOJO ABOT? She is a nomadic, interdisciplinary artist and musician. She's toured with Miss Lauryn Hill. She's also performed at festivals and venues like Afropunk, the Roots Picnic, Radio City Music Hall, the Apollo Theater, and the Kennedy Center. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, here's JOJO ABOT.
God among men, we are God. God among men, we are God.
For this, where you at? Yo, you seen him? Been waiting for a fall from the sky. Getting in a ride, check it, you seen him? My face got me blind, thinking he's taller white than my whole line. Be black, bang, bang, this crazy. Oh my God, you mean? Is that you on the whip, cruising past full speed, or sitting by the pool, sipping on an iced tea? I don't know, maybe, but damn sure you in black. They told me. Maybe you been staying on the other side with the other folk. Way be nice and quiet with the fence real high, so you can protect your kind. Check it. Maybe you're maybe you're maybe you're higher. Maybe you're higher. God, maybe you're maybe you're higher. Maybe you're made in the image of the Most High. Maybe you're higher. Maybe you're maybe you are God. Maybe you are maybe you are made.
It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you beautiful people tonight. I hope you're feeling power. I hope you're feeling alive. I hope you're feeling the love. This is all for you.
Toast of the days when
when your presence stirred me. Freed in my mind, toe to toe, now dare me. Cause I'd be there if my children were to repeat the struggle for so-called freedom that distracts me. Should see the feet, follow me. How do you feel low so much? Don't me. Viva Bokia, Lucy, don't me. Gaduchi, Kuna, one of the days when I folks play nice. You tired of your fish, don't apologize. Invade all that, spreading all your lies. You use and abuse or sacrifice. Burn in your Babylon. Fire, fire. Burn in your Babylon. We're marching to Babylon. To break your down. We're marching to Babylon. To break our walk. We are marching to Babylon. To break it all down. We are marching to break it. We're marching down to Babylon, yeah. To break our walk. We're marching down to Babylon, yeah. To break. Marching down to Babylon, yeah. To break our walk. Marching down to Babylon. To break our walk. Marching down to Babylon. New generation, unafraid, we're marching down to your Babylon, to your centers of greed and hatred, breaking your walls down.
Power to the people, power to the God within, power to the unafraid, the bold and the brave. Peace, joy, abundance, bliss to you and yours.
Tell me the story.
Y'all feeling good? Cause I'm sweating over here. Hope y'all feeling the love.
Vulnerability escapes me. I'm afraid. I feel I could be where you want if I let us be. I feel what you're thinking of how it feels to have you here right with me. Oh, what I feel. Oh,
Nasi simbola
Thank you, Baltimore Museum of Arts, for having me. My name is JOJO Abbott. You are born into a fire, a world that's on fire. Would you let the fire consume you? Or would you become the raging fire? You are the fire. Power to the people. Power to the God.
Tell me Fabi, me chaya, me chibome, amadeke, me linamo, me pomia, odusi, nyenuku, donye wopo clown. Come chichi, come nyenye, etititi, ame kume mako, no vimele kontro, da.
Power to the people.
Incredible performance there from JoJo Abbott. Thank you so much. We'll be hearing again from JoJo Abbott a little later on in the program. Now it's time to introduce Asma Naeem. Asma is the Eddie C. and C. Sylvia Brown Chief Curator at the Baltimore Museum of Art. And since joining the BMA just 2 years ago, Asma has led a team of curators to conceive and realize the museum's ambitious program of 25 exhibitions celebrating the accomplishments of female identifying artists as part of the BMA's 2020 Vision Initiative. Asma is also the curator of Candace Bright's Too Long Didn't Read on view through January 10th, 2021, and co-curator of Valerie Maynard Lost and Found on view through January 3rd. Her recent book is titled Out of Earshot: Sound, Technology, and Class in American Art, 1847 to 1897, and that's published by the University of California, Berkeley Press. And in her book, Asma urges scholars to think in nuanced and expansive ways about the relations between the visual arts, sound technologies, and sensory experience. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome Chief Curator Asma Naeem to the screen. Hello, Asma.
Hi, Kim. Thanks for that kind introduction and with that amazing voice of yours. The evening's just begun and we're already off to such an incredible start with an incredible vibe. Hi, everybody out there. Thanks for joining us this evening. Well, here we are a century after the ratification of the 19th Amendment, which gave white women the right to vote. Women are still undervalued, under-recognized, and underpaid in nearly every facet of our society. While the BMA's 2020 Vision Initiative celebrates the extraordinary achievements of female identifying artists, it also acknowledges that most museums are deficient in exhibiting and acquiring their work, and we're setting out to change that. The museum is very proud to present the work of an incredibly diverse and talented group of contemporary artists. Candice Brights, Zachary Drucker, Valerie Maynard, Anna Mendieta, Alyssa Blount-Moorhead, Joe Smale, Shanique Smith, Howardina Pindell, Shan Wallace, and 4 quilters from Gee's Bend, Alabama, Lucy Mingo, Loretta Petway, Hurley Irby Petway, and Nell Hall Williams. The museum is also displaying works by Lakota women who created subversive beadworks to preserve their heritage and protect their families. We also have on view a show honoring the legacy of one of the greatest female directors in this museum's history, Adeline Breeskin. And we've begun expanding the museum's collection with major works by Barbara Chase Reboux, Suzanne Jackson, Wendy Red Star, Martine Sims, and many others, and there's many more to come. The Necessity of Tomorrow's speaker series borrows its title from an essay by science fiction author Samuel Delany. Delany argues for the role of creative speculation in making a more just future. Since 2017, the BMA has hosted a variety of acclaimed creators and thinkers under this mantle, including Mark Bradford, Ta-Nehisi Coates, and Nicole Hannah-Jones. I'm very pleased tonight to present 3 inspiring women. Tarana Burke and Nadya Tolokonnikova are joining us this evening. The works and lives of these 2 extraordinary women firmly represents the ideals of a just future. Tarana is best known for creating the Me Too movement. She has dedicated her life to social justice work and giving strength to those who experience sexual trauma, abuse, or harassment. Among the many accolades Tarana has received for this work are the 2017 Person of the Year, along with other silence breakers from Time Magazine, and Australia's 2019 Sydney Peace Prize. Many are not aware that Tarana has also developed programs for several organizations, including the National Voting Rights Museum and Institute in Alabama and the Art Sanctuary in Philadelphia, to build community engagement through art. Nadya is an artist, political activist, and founding member of the feminist protest art collective Pussy Riot, one of the world's most prominent activist art groups in recent years. Pussy Riot has brought attention to human rights violations in Russia and abroad, and were named among the 100 women of the world by Time Magazine in 2012. Our moderator this evening is the inimitable Jenna Wortham, a writer for the New York Times Magazine and co-host of the newspaper's podcast, Still Processing. Jenna is also the co-editor of the forthcoming anthology, Black Futures, with Kimberly Drew. She's an herbalist as well, and a community care worker oriented towards justice and liberation. We're so grateful to have these 3 inspiring women joining us this evening. The BMA is most fortunate to have this event funded through the legacy of our former board chair, Suzanne F. Cohen, and the Cohen Opportunity Fund. We dedicate this evening in honor of Sue for her dual passions for art and social justice, and for especially advancing the rights of women. Now I'll turn the program over to Jenna Wortham.
Thank you, Usma, and thank you, Kim. My name is Jenna Wortham, and it is such an honor to be here in such exquisite company. And I'm really thrilled to be a part of this event for Baltimore and the Baltimore Museum of Art. I have family in Baltimore, a lot of good friends hail from there and live there. And I always love an opportunity to rep the city. So thank you for having me. Good evening to everyone who tuned in tonight. Grateful to have you. I'm sure you're as eager and as excited as I am to hear from our panelists this evening. I'll be moderating the discussion for about an hour with Tarana and Nadya. And we'll also have room at the end for questions from the audience. So we want to invite you to submit your questions through both Facebook Live and YouTube or the program's website. And don't hold back, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. Okay. I'm so excited to talk to you both.
Talk to you.
What was that?
I said, I'm excited to talk to you.
Thank you. Well, one thing that's on my mind is, this event was originally scheduled for the spring, and like so many other things, was put on ice and delayed for a little while. Now it's almost November. I'm so curious to hear from you both about what you've been reflecting on these last couple of months.
I don't know that I've given myself enough time for reflection in the last couple of months. If I'm being honest, I think that I would probably do some reflecting these last few months about just how much has happened in the past 10 months. It's just, even when I think a little bit about taking it, somebody asked me the other day about Sundance, and I was like, last year? All right, then we did go to Sundance. I forgot that there was like, our regular lives at some point this year. So I don't know that I've done enough reflecting. I think I've been doing a lot of forward thinking, thinking a lot about 2021, thinking a lot about what the future holds, and just the things that I want, the lessons that I have been learning this year, and how I want to bring those, like change my life this way generally, not just because of a pandemic or a situation. So that's kind of where my mind is. It's just like, okay, it's time to really think about, like, with some intention, who I want to be, how I want to be, how I want to show up in the world, how I want people around me, like that kind of thing.
First of all, I want to tell you both that it's a great pleasure to speak with you today. And thank you for joining. I'm really grateful for this opportunity to have this conversation. And if we talk about my last 2 months, well, I've been reflecting about the future as well, but also about things that this global pandemic made us, I think, all think about how accessible is like the simple human stuff like healthcare for us, about inequality, and why pandemic affects one people much more than other groups of people. And I would not say that this year was a positive experience because we've seen a lot of deaths, but it was a useful experience in a way that it made us stop and really reflect on issues like inequality, injustice, and racism. And I feel like this year was really awesome for inspiring people's political imagination, because I've never saw so many projections in the future as I saw from activists from various parts of the world about how 2021 will look like, how 2050 will look like. Because before I felt we've been trapped in this 24 hours news cycle, and we would talk just about, I don't know, how Donald Trump farted today. And and I'm welcoming all these discussions about, the future of public safety. Like, do we need so much police on the streets? Should we just defund the police and give the money and power to someone else, to social workers who are much more equipped to do their job? So I'm kind of depressed by this year, with just, amount of tragic things that it brought, but also I'm mesmerized because it gives us interesting perspectives about the future.
That makes me wonder, how do we make space to future dream and look ahead when the present feels so precarious? How are you finding that balance, like making that space to project outward while we're so day to day in the uncertainty?
I think that's why I haven't been able to look back, because I think that for me, the looking forward is the part that makes me feel hopeful, because the day to day is can feel. I actually, this year has been interesting because there's so much tragedy that's happened, but it hasn't been a terrible year. Like, there's been some really great things that have happened too, but it just feels uncomfortable to celebrate when there's so much tragedy around you, I think. But yeah, I think the looking forward has been what's given me some hope, and also to see the way that people, I know our folks are resilient. I get that, and I've seen it a whole bunch of different times in different ways, but it doesn't, every single time it's invigorating. Every single time you watch people just bounce back and figure out new ways to bounce back. And this generation in particular, I mean, young people like I forget, I don't know what they call Gen Z, Zennials, or my daughter is somewhere in between there, but that the like 20 somethings and younger are they're so phenomenal. Like, I know it sounds very old and auntie, but like, the young people give me strength, but they make me feel less scared about the future. They make me feel like we have done some things right, although we've got, we messed up the plan and we got a lot of stuff wrong. But so I like watching them. I like watching how they move. I like, following their lead to some extent around, because their resilience is a different kind to me. I feel like when we were resilient and through a certain tragedies, my generation, I mean, it was with a burden, if you will. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you just got to be a martyr all the time and you have to carry this burden, and there was no joy infused in it. And I think these young people are like, twerking their way to the future. And it's just so dope. Like, I'm like, I want to do what they do, Mm-hmm. So I love it.
Do you want to add anything, Nadya?
I really share your celebration of the young people, and I want to point out, especially because I'm from Russia, the amazing young people in Russia. For us, the last 10 years have been a big step in terms of development of feminism and LGBTQ plus issues. Mm-hmm. And when we started in the end of 2011, when we started the movement, it was totally uncomfortable to be a feminist. So if you would call yourself an activist or a feminist, it equals being a freak. And I was willing to be that freak. I was fine with it. But today it's much more comfortable. And so that's why feminism and LGBTQ made this breakthrough into mainstream in a lot of ways because of the young generation and because of them sharing the same space with young people from your country. They're all sharing time in the same TikTok. And so today in 2020, it's really fashionable. I would not fear this word. It's fashionable to be an activist. And I'm really happy about that, because when we started our activism, we were dreaming about that, but we wanted to we formulated our goals clearly as bringing joy back to the protest action. Mm-hmm. Because I totally know what you mean. 10 years ago, protest was like a boring duty, or I mean, not necessarily boring, but the duty, martyrdom, right? Today it has changed so much, and I feel so proud that it looks like Pussy Riot brought a little bit, that we influenced somehow this change. Yeah. And generally speaking about the future, I think we, the people, we have to take back this conversation about the future from governments and big business and corporations and ultra rich people. In the beginning of this lockdown, I posted a number of books that I was recommending people to read on the quarantine. And there were a lot of books about the future. And I got a lot of comments like, what do you think about that? Like, you're not a rich person, like you're not living in Silicon Valley. It's not like we have to deal with the issues right here in front of us. And I think while we have to deal with issues right here in front of us, if we don't own this conversation about the future and visions of the future and just give it away to Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk or whoever else, then, the better future will not come.
I love that you both are bringing up the importance of joy. And I think sometimes, when we hear that, it sounds like we're prioritizing joy above all else, as though joy can't live alongside resistance. It can't live alongside activism. It can't live alongside these urgent means of work as well. And I guess I'm curious to hear you both reflect on the ways in which you found joy in doing movement work and the potentials for the joy and resistance to work in tandem, because I do think what you're both speaking to is so powerful. And we've seen the images of people dancing in the street during the uprisings, you know, and that doesn't mean they're not grieving and upset, but they're finding space for this other expression as well.
Yeah, I think that's precisely it. And I think in my work in particular, dealing with survivors of sexual violence, joy is a part of the work. Joy is resistance, right? It is helping survivors tap into the ability to hold joy is a big part of the healing process. And it is also a part of what activates them to want to do the work. And so they have to work alongside each other. It's not like, let's stop now and take some time out to be joyful, right? I mean, you know, however you work it into your life and however people find ways to be joyful outside of it, that's great. But I also think that's why we have, we use, as a friend of mine used to have the tagline of her organization, culture as a weapon. It is expressions of culture, expressions of art and culture are also bring joy and can be used for resistance. Bodily expressions that can bring joy and can be, you know, expressions of resistance. So if it's a whole team of young people who have locked arms and they are doing whatever the dance is down the block, but they're not letting the police come through, right? That's very literal, but there's a combination of things happening. They're doing that and having fun. They may be scared as well, but that addition of both the community and the joy helps them through that. And so I am a huge proponent. I think joy is highly prioritized in my work because it is one of the biggest tools in our arsenal to move the work forward.
I personally feel if your activism is not bringing you joy, then it's not likely that it's going to last for a long time, because you can suffer for a year or 2 or 3 or even 5, but then later you will end up choosing something else. Right. So instead of that, I'm trying to find a way of activism that's suitable for me. And this is thing that I like to talk with young activists a lot. Sometimes they feel like they have to conform to certain ways how activists should act, how should they look, how should they talk. And sometimes it's not suitable for your own personality. It does not bring you joy personally. So at some point of my life, when I was a really young activist, I was a teenager, I was thinking I should be a journalist or I should be a politician, and it required a lot of communication with people. And then I realized that I'm an introvert, and I felt so bad about myself until I found art, which is a great tool, and you don't have to communicate with people all the time, but you still can amplify your voice and voice of your community to a great level. So, and when I think about joy in protest, I always think about 1968 and the whole civil rights movement. And I've been talking with some people who witnessed that, and they told me exactly this. So they knew how to combine joy in the protest. That's why this combination of joy and activism brought them great results and made the movement really sustainable.
Thank you both for that. You know, we're in such an interesting moment right now because so much of our work is relegated to an online sphere, and we're seeing such interesting interplay between activists, performers, and artists because of social media. And Tarana, I was thinking about something you said in an interview not long ago about, you know, that hashtags themselves aren't movements, they amplify movements. And I've been thinking, that struck me when I read it, however long ago that was, but I've been really thinking about that now as we're in this moment where everything is happening digitally. And so I'm curious to hear you both expand on, you know, the idea of how movements, I guess, work now, or has our notion of what a movement is evolved or shifted at all because of the conditions we're operating under now for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I get people ask me about that line a lot. And I think in some ways there's some generational stuff there, right? Because I didn't say that to invalidate, folks who do work on the internet. In fact, one of the things I think that's really, really not good that movement people do is we will, to call people, oh, you're just a Twitter activist, or you're just an online da 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 da. And I think all of that is important. If you are a person who just retweets, information about the movement or post IG posts, that's all you are. You are influencing your sphere. It's your sphere of influence, and you're giving them direct information. But I think that one of the things I've learned in the last 3 years, as a person who's been doing this work for since a teenager, is that the general population doesn't really understand what movements are. And so, movements are long, they are strategic, and they involve multiple people doing multiple things and multiple interventions. And so I think sometimes when the reason why I talked about that is that because people look at the Me Too hashtag or the such and such, or Black Lives Matter hashtag, right? And they ask questions like, well, what's next? Like, we did the hashtag. And I'm like, no, it's not the thing, right? That's the thing that points to the thing. Mm-hmm. And so while a part of the movement will take place online, the hashtag itself is not a movement. Creating a hashtag and putting it out in the world is not a movement. It creates conversation, it amplifies an issue. But I do think we have to be, that's not to say that movement work can't happen online, though, right? I think those are two different things. And so I just think we have to be careful about the way we label things movements, right? It's just, it almost waters down the idea of what a movement is, right? You think about the civil rights movement or the Black Power movement, there are multiple people through organizations and individuals who had strategy and moved that strategy forward, and like there's a whole lot that goes into it. This is not just a bunch of folks writing stuff on the internet and leaving it at that. If you don't have boots on the ground in some way, even digital boots, I just don't think you can qualify it in the same way. Mm. And I think I'll say this last thing, in this moment after, with having a pandemic and an uprising happen at the same time, I watched that very closely, right? I watched what was happening very closely. It was sort of at the height of COVID too. So my nerves were really bad about being out in the world amongst a bunch of people, sometimes with masks, sometimes without. But I also knew that energy was spilling over and people could not hold it inside their homes. Posting about it wasn't going to be enough, and people had to take to the streets. And I think that is also indicative of movement. You want to move, right? You want to feel like you are in it, you're involved in it. You want to, be a part of something. The marching through the street is still only a part of the movement. The posting online is still only a part of the movement. When you pull all these different pieces together, then you have a better picture of what's happening. But yeah, those are just my thoughts about that.
Okay. Thank you so much, by the way, for wonderful questions. And Tarana, thank you so much for sharing your insights. It's such a pleasure to hear you. And yeah, so digital tools for activism. When I think about digital tools that we can use for activism, I think about something that I call internet hygiene, if it makes sense. Because it's really easy to let internet use you, especially social media. But the thing about social media hygiene is to force them to obey and actually use them instead of the dynamic the other way. So I believe that if we are all gonna talk more about how to consciously use these tools, they have an amazing possibility. And I see it on the example of my country, where all the mainstream media are government owned or government controlled, and they just show really stupid, crazy propaganda against all the activists, and they're not showing. I mean, it's like it's real fake news. So, but we are seeing that people in Russia, they are changing their media consumption. So they're going on the internet, not just to watch memes. I mean, some memes are political too, but so they're going on the internet, not just for entertainment, but for reading news about what's happening. So I think if we are conscious about how we use it, internet can be a great tool for building movements and initiating a revolution.
Yeah, I have to say I'm sorry, I talk too much, but I think that in terms of the generation thing I was saying, one of the things that's been fascinating for me to watch is how social media added this element to building movement that we didn't see. I definitely didn't see growing up. And I was just telling somebody else, I was just talking about this, about Tyrone Davis, the black man who was executed in Georgia in like 2012, I think. I remember very distinctly that case being where I saw this emergence of organizing online and thought to myself, oh, this is different, because I remember the thing I remembered before that was like Gen 6, which I forget what year that was, but certainly before the boom of internet. And we were organizing nationally to get people to come to Louisiana by fax, by phone call, by email, trying to get people to come. There was no mechanism that you could just post something and people would see it from all over and respond to it. And so, again, I don't want to undermine in any way the power of social media, the positive power of social media as a tool for building movements. I just don't think they can live completely on, online, unless it's an online, like about something online, like digital something or other, like cybersecurity and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think it's fascinating to watch how one person with a certain amount of followers can say, in fact, it happened to me during the Kavanaugh hearing. I put out a call, these national organizations came together and said, can you put out a call for people to walk out of work on Monday? And I thought, I don't even like to. And I was like, all right, everybody, blah, 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 blah. And then there's a flood of people. And I was like, oh, look at that. This is amazing, that part is just, you cannot even count the value.
I appreciate that. And I definitely don't think you're undermining the power of social media at all. I think, that I'm so drawn to that line because I think we're still learning so much about how to make things work together in new ways. And we're learning about how to drive attention from online to offline and try to also educate people about how movements do work and what activism is. And I think we've come to realize, especially in this country, most people don't understand that these are not issues or problems that get solved overnight, that these are the work of lifetimes.
Right.
But we have seen also such an interesting, I guess, confluence of digital tools and internet hygiene, and also watching people in a pandemic see the power of gathering and the power of congregating and the power of protesting in public too. And I guess I'm wondering if, has there been anything new that we've learned about organizing or movement building structures or systems that from this particular window of time, these last 8 months, that feels really essential to hold on to when one day we come out of a pandemic with any luck?
Yeah, I think I'm still thinking about that. One of the things that has been, I remember when in movement circles, the idea of defunding the police was coming into the conversation, right? People started talking about that as strategy, and that's, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. And it was so radical. And so for some people, far left, that, there would be infighting about, that's too much. You can't put that, you got to take people slowly. And watching defund the police become a rallying cry in this moment was fascinating to me. And there's also a lesson one of the things that I think that I think this is a lesson I've actually picked up over the last 3 years since the viral Me Too moment too, is that those of us who are movement leaders, movement followers, movement folks who believe in justice, who are working towards liberation, I think that there's some way some of us don't dream big enough, right? We don't sort of dream into our visions. We don't like live into our visions. So we talk our visions and then we limit ourselves in practice. And as opposed to just getting it out there and allowing it to build community around it. There's always going to be some community, even if it's a small one, there's always going to be some community around it. And so I've watched people, and that's another thing I think I've picked up from young people, that they throw all of it against the wall. And I think that's okay, because there's also this idea that if you are in movement or if you are in, working towards liberation, that you have all the answers, that your work is perfect, right? And you are some moral authority in some way. No, we have to have people who are making mistakes, and we have to create space to not just fail publicly. I don't want to say just fail, but like to grapple publicly. One of the lessons that I would love to take back, I'm going back to the future, that I would like to move forward with, like to see carried forward, is this way that, there's all the debate about like cancel culture and all that kind of stuff. But there's also this growing trend of allowing people to grapple with things that you should grapple with publicly. We should have public discourse, respectful public discourse about things we don't agree with, and about, if we're all ultimately heading towards the same thing or want the same thing, but we have different visions on how to get there, we should grapple with that publicly and what that means. If one person is doing a thing and we're not sure you don't really understand how this will lead us, move forward our liberation vision, we should talk about that more publicly and grapple with that and have grace for folks to do that. So it's not, or if somebody doesn't live up to your expectation of what this leader should do, or this person who believes this should not act like this, kind of what you were talking about, Nadya, earlier, we have to have space for the fullness of our humanity, because there's a way that we talk about liberation, but we don't value liberation, right? We talk about it, but then we talk about liberation, and then at the same time, we provide constraints. I want us to be free. I want all Black people to be free. I want all queer people to be free, but don't act like this. And don't show up like this. And don't not agree with me this many ways, right? And I love that. I think this generation is breaking a lot of that down and moving away and saying, I will show up this way. I will make mistakes out loud. I will be fully human, and I will still be fighting towards liberation. And that I pray that continues, because I think this pandemic has got people like, whatever, okay. I mean, forget it. I'll try everything, right? I'll try that too. So I hope that's a trend that grows into the future.
Mm-hmm. I loved what you said about making mistakes. I personally always took pride in owning my mistakes. And I love when people admitting their mistakes, and I love when they're being forgiving for mistakes. We had an event this year. There is a Russian TV anchor. Her name is Regina Todorenko, and she was not a feminist before. More than that, she stated a couple of times in interviews that if a man hits his wife, then it means that she deserved it. So why it's meaningful? Because it was the first time this year when actually this statement of hers created a public outcry, and she had to publicly apologize for this opinion, and she took some lessons she learned, and then she made a movie against domestic violence. And I think it's a beautiful thing that people are changing, and it's a beautiful thing that given us to forgive other people and forgive ourselves for our mistakes. So, and I totally loved what you said about pandemic that gave us this liberation moment, because I remember when I was about to go on tour in North America in March and April, and actually this event had to happen at the time. And all of a sudden it didn't happen. And at the time I still had my really, really rigid managers, white men, and they were trying to tell me something. Yeah, we're supposed to. I'm like, the whole world is not moving in the way how you suppose it to move. So let's just improvise. And some people just don't get it, but I think people who are ready to embrace the unknown and move towards it, that they win the most in this year. What did we talk about before? What was the initial question? I think because I had something to tell you, but I forgot what was the initial question.
Just what are some of the lessons of right now that we're learning so much, and so what do you want to take from right now into the future?
We were completely driven away. So I can speak from my perspective, an artist in lockdown. Before I was shy to do a lot of things, to work a lot of with green screen, to work alone in my studio, to record myself. And strangely, this time was really liberating to me. So I think I'm going to save it for later, even post-pandemic times, because I'm a nomadic person and I'm all the time on the road somewhere, like as most of the artists. So sometimes before I was still waiting for time to make an action or to record a political song, and I felt like I have to be physically in the same space with people. And now I can just do it on the road in my trailer or tour bus. So yeah, I would definitely take that this lesson from pandemic.
Excellent. Something that's coming up for me is, as we're talking about shifting dynamics of power and liberation and digital tools, is thinking about, the paradoxical paradigm that technology presents, which is to say, we're now we were already dependent on these platforms, but now I would say maybe overly dependent on Facebook and YouTube and Google and Amazon and, all of these services and everything that we're using all the time. And these are large international companies that on one hand, they have a vested interest in hosting all of these discussions and all of these movements and the movement work, because, it's good for them to have it all happening on their platforms, but they're not necessarily vested and invested in the outcome. Right. And so, and a lot of times their actual business practices interfere with the work we're trying to do. So I'm really, thinking, I'm thinking about this a lot, but I'm curious if you two have started to grapple with, that paradigm, especially because so much of the work that's happening online is really precious and also precarious because of the companies that facilitate it.
It is the funkiest dynamic, yeah, right? I think the most recent example is there's this whole, I don't know if you probably have been following this thing about the Instagram algorithm has changed, or something happened with the Instagram algorithm. And so, and it's curious, right? Like, I don't want to feed into wild conspiracy theories, but then it's really hard not to when I'm looking at the Black creators that I know on Instagram whose accounts seem to be throttled some kind of way or blocked out some kind of way, or what they call shadow banned, and these different things that happen. I put a post about our new platform that we just introduced, and they got, it's like 600 likes or 300 likes or views or whatever. And I have a random picture of my brother's for his 50th birthday. It has 6,000 likes, right? And nobody knows my brother. There's nothing relevant about that, except that that's sort of the beat that I had, the pace that I had been accustomed to. So why the change when we putting up political stuff? And we can't do anything about that. And there has definitely been a conversation, definitely lately, with movement folks that I'm, in community with, about what our alternatives are, right? We recognize, we're always there's that movie that's out there, everybody's watching it, The Social Experiment. I haven't seen it yet. The Social Dilemma, sorry. And I haven't seen it yet, but my girlfriend told me a line and it keeps running through my head where they said something like, if you don't own it, then you're the product. Something like that. If you don't own it, then you're the product. I was like, oh, that thing sat on my chest to think, it shifted also my thinking. Yeah, we are the product. They are shaping us, moving us, influencing us in major ways that we don't even know, chasing us around the internet, like getting in our minds, burrowing in our minds that we need to buy things, or setting up the algorithm so you see certain things but you don't see others. It worries me because, like we were saying, these are amazing tools. I don't know about Amazon, but these social media has amazing tools for us that can be used in really positive ways. But even the alternatives are other digital platforms, right? And we don't have the technology until we have somebody who is with this analysis that many of us share, who would build something like that. And even if they did, people probably wouldn't switch, right? And they'd have like Black Book and people like, I don't want to be a glitter or something like that. Nobody's going to join that. So I'm really just restating it. I'm reflecting on it. I don't have a solution, but I definitely recognize, and I know it's a growing concern amongst movement folks, right? Like, what are we going to do? At the end of the day, I think part of it is at the end of the day, we have to always remember this is not ours. We didn't build it. We don't own it. We don't control it. And as much as we can use it to our advantage, we have to, but you have to keep that in the front of your head. This is not ours.
I think that we should demand actually that those big data corporations, they would take in mind our vote when they make their decisions. This is not happening right now at all, but I see this structure, like we are the workers in the structure. We are providing them content, and we should be co-owners. So in my mind, it could be solved through everyone who joins the social network and who given their work to this platform to co-own the company in a way, and to have a vote about how the algorithm is going to be changed or it's not going to be changed. Because take a look at Facebook, it commercialized so crazily, and take a look at Cambridge Analytica case. It's totally insane, and nobody can abandon this platform, especially if some people can abandon this platform, but like I personally spent years of my life working on this platform that I feel like I own, but I don't, in fact, and I feel like it will require like mass people, global planetary movement to request from these companies that we should have some word about what's happening with our data, what's happening with our labor that we're putting into these platforms, and what's happening with our personal information.
Yeah, thank you both for such thoughtful answers. And I'm a former tech reporter, and so it like keeps me awake at night. Like I think about it all the time. But I do think what you're both speaking to is really important. We make use of what's useful and then kind of try to push them towards better practices as much as possible, and hold them accountable where we can. And I've been thinking a lot about, to me, one of the things that I think kind of counteracts all the worries that I have about social media, which is the potential for, cross-cultural and cross-community solidarity. And I think, with even just my introduction to Pussy Riot and coming in and in 2012 and becoming aware of the band and getting really like, I need to learn about what's going on in Russia, and kind of making those connections, to, LGBTQAI work here and there, and realizing, okay, I care about my community here, and I have to care about that community in Russia. And same with, Me Too, and kind of just connecting all these dots on social media. And I think I'm interested in sort of the potential for solidarity. And I think as much as we do battle with the algorithm, even right now, there's so much awareness that is raised through social media. And curious sort of how, if you still feel there's all this potential for solidarity, or is it shifting even as we try to negotiate the things that might be drowning out messages potentially?
Nadia, I'll let you go.
Lately, I had the craziest problem with YouTube and Google. They were banning the name of our band because of the word pussy.
Wow.
It was really awkward. So, and some of our videos were shadow banned, and we couldn't get, you would not find them in search if you try to find. We solved it because we contacted the team of Google people, but again, not everyone has the privilege of knowing those people. So yeah, that was really awkward. So minding all these constraints, I'm really positive about global solidarity. I more than that, I think today we as human species, we face global problems, and the answer should be global as well. And previous global organizations like the UN, they don't always make the best job. They're not solving all the problems that we have, and there should be something else that will arise from the ashes of previous organizations. And I think it should be built by people. It should be built by activists. So without global solidarity, we're not going to join. We're not going to solve global problems like warming planet or global inequality.
Yeah, so again, the flip side, right? And to big, kind of building on something I said earlier about like dreaming into our vision or living into our vision, that when I was doing this work in my community, and it started in Selma, Alabama, and then I did it in Philadelphia and some in New York, it was always grassroots community-based work. Local young people or local adults and young people coming together to talk about and work around sexual violence in ways that I just didn't see happening in other social justice spaces in my community. When Me Too went viral, of course, it becomes this big global thing. But at the end of the day, what I realized is that the people who said Me Too still need the same things, are still looking for and need the same things as those people in my community in the very grassroots level. And so one of the most beautiful and powerful things to come from the viral moment is that we have all of these Me Too's popping up in different countries. So over the last 3 years, India, Mexico, Australia, Sweden, various countries in Africa, South Africa, Rwanda, Ghana, Ethiopia, we've been contacted by so many groups from across the world. So we're doing global work now, right? We're have expanded our work to meet the global need. That would be next to impossible without social media, right? And the thing that makes that talking about this solidarity. So now we have the opportunity to come in and convene these groups from different parts of the world, and they're all grassroots. It's not like you were talking, it's not like the UN Council on so-and-so or the global whatever. These are groups of people in a country who started a hashtag, and other people used that hashtag. Then they contacted each other through back channels using social media. A lot of places, Me Too China, I thought had one of the most subversive and brilliant strategies around that. You couldn't put hashtag Me Too up on the internet in China. So what they did was they used 2 emojis, a little bunny and a little bowl of rice, because the bunny, the word was MI, like me, and the rice was TU, like, two. Brilliant. That's just brilliant. Like every time I think about it, I'm just like, people gonna get their message across. You cannot stop movement. You really can't. It's just like once it gets going. So I do think despite the algorithms and the big business and the blah, 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 there is a solidarity that has built and is still growing across the world. And it would be next to impossible to connect with those folks if not for these outlets to do that. So we're going to stay. So we're going to stay, right? And we're going to, like you said, Nadya, push them as much as we can, because I mean, that's the nature of what we do anyway, right? We push back against any form of somebody trying to oppress in any kind of way. So we'll stay and we'll fight and we'll complain and we'll talk loud on those same platforms about what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And, I think we'll make some progress in moving them, because there is still a reality of, like, you were talking about ownership. People, public perception, there still has some cachet, right? And so you don't want to be known. People are leaving Facebook in droves, even though Instagram is the same company, but they're leaving Facebook in droves. I hear it all the time. Oh, I don't even go on Facebook anymore, because of the perception, right? If this country is in the state that it's in, and you play a role in advancing that, I don't want anything to do with you. So, I think they have to respond to that at some point.
They better.
They better.
Exactly. Bottom line.
We're going to go into audience questions in just a moment. And so I'm going to look over and see what was submitted. And while I'm doing that, I wanted to hear you both just reflect on, if you were interested, on just how do you sustain long-term? Because I think right now we're hearing a lot of people talk about burnout and protest fatigue, mm-hmm. and you both have been organizing and activists since you were teenagers. And so, how do you sustain that over the years? What are your tips for longevity and caretaking?
Now you want to go?
Yeah. First thing that we discussed before, joy. If you know how to combine joy and activism, it will last longer. The second is community. Community gives the biggest strength. It's the biggest source of courage to me, because when I'm surrounded by amazing, courageous women, I don't feel like backing up and not doing my work as an activist. We support each other, we encourage each other to make actions, but also we support each other if we feel like, we are tired and we need some break. So empathy and community work is a really big source for me of my long-term activism. And in the end of the story, just do what you love. I think this is the universal answer, and not expect things to change tomorrow, because I see it in a lot of people who just come to activism. I saw it a lot in people who joined Women's March and who became activists for the first time right after Donald Trump was elected in the United States. And right after Women's March, I saw so many people who were burned out, because they thought if they're going to make this effort and make this big, giant, amazing action, then Donald Trump will be gone. But unfortunately, that's not how it works in activism. Sometimes you have to work for years and for dozens of years and nothing is changing. And sometimes things magically change when you literally don't do anything. So it's more like magic. It's not like, activism doesn't work as a capitalist economy. It's not like I'm giving you $1 and you give me an apple. It's economy of magic. Yes. It's economy of gift.
I love that. It's the same thing we say about it's not transactional. Like, yes, it is. I think, I want these young people who are getting into movement work now to learn lessons from those of us who've been in it for a long time. And I also want them to study. I want them to learn and take some time to invest in understanding successful and unsuccessful movements over, the history of time. But in terms of, being sustained, I absolutely get this question a lot, right? And people ask, because of the nature of the work, how do you listen to people's stories and things like that? I always say my number one self-care practice is boundaries, right? Before anything else, I have a very comfortable relationship with the word no. I was fortunately raised by a mother who said on a regular basis, and I would say, can I ask you a question? She's like, go ahead, you got a 50-50 shot. And so I was raised to be comfortable with hearing no, and I was also raised to be comfortable with saying no. And that's been really, really helpful for me, because I lose, you lose it sometimes. you start feeling pressured, and you're a public figure now. People need, this person needs you. And they use that word need, and that's not real. You don't actually need me because I'm not helping you breathe. I'm not paying your rent, right? I'm not carrying you to work. You don't need me. So that's part of the practices that I use to sustain myself. And I tell that to other young people because there is this culture of martyrdom. And I tell a lot of stories, but there was one of the most impactful stories for me about this was I had an opportunity to spend some time with Toni Morrison. And we had like a private, the author, and we had a private session with her and some young people. And I brought my daughter, of course. And my daughter asked about, about writer's block. And then, what do you do when you really feel like blocked and you can't write anymore? And she said, I don't believe in writer's block. There's no such thing. If you're blocked, you're supposed to be blocked. And she said, what she tells her students is it's sort of God's way of telling you to pause, and you have to respect the pause. So if you feel burnt out in this work, then I think it is actually more beneficial to the movement for you to take a step back. Because when you find your passion, it is always going to call you back home. So there's no risk of you leaving the work for a little while and then never doing it again. Then you're not supposed to be here. There's another path for you. But if you feel so burnt out that I can't go to another march, I can't watch another, don't. It is also action. It is also a liberation practice to take care of yourself, right? And we need people who are fully actualized human beings, who feel joy, who feel worthy, who feel not burnt out in the world, to be examples of the world that we want to get to. So it's fine to take a step back from this work. It's fine I think it's actually a privilege to recognize when it's burnout. Because when you recognize that, then you have the opportunity to say, you know what, a little bit of self-assessment, I'm gonna take a break from this, right? I've moved away from this work on many occasions. And some of it is just like the thing that we don't talk about is this doesn't pay, right? When nobody is in liberation work to get paid, I get paid for like speaking engagements and stuff now, but up until 3 years ago, I had a regular ass salary and I got a kid in college and I got, and prior to, I'm grown now and I've had a lot of experience so I can get these higher level jobs. But the majority of my life was spent working in nonprofit organizations, making way less than scale, way less than whatever the market rate was. And so financially, sometimes I had to take a step back. So if I'm working every day on this little bitty nonprofit salary, and after work, I'm organizing, doing this, volunteering here, got these groups, I had to take a break because I couldn't afford it. And we don't talk often enough about that, I think, right? Like there's a lot of people out here, particularly women of color, who are volunteering right now, volunteering at the polls, driving people to the polls, registering people to vote, doing all this extra work they're not getting paid for. So whatever practice you have to do to take care of yourself, I am all for that. I consider that movement work. And I think that we have to respect however people need to show up in the moment.
I could listen to you too. I could listen to you two all night. I'm just like taking it all in. It's so good. Okay, so we have some incredible audience questions. Thank you to everyone who submitted. This one I think is really powerful. And so thank you to whoever submitted it. We've been talking a lot about the online space, but can you talk about the implications of movement work on your bodies, from arrest to incarceration to stress, etc.? It seems that no matter how virtual it gets, our bodies are still on the line.
That's right.
It's true.
It's true. I mean, I'm 47, and I think I know it was in 2014 after Mike Brown, when, people were taken to the street again in protest, and I was out there, I was marching with my daughter was in high school at the time. I remember making a very conscious decision that I wasn't doing this no more. I can't, I physically cannot do this anymore. I have been out here marching in the rain till I'm cold and sick. I have been, all these kind of things. And I had to figure out another way to show up. So I'm gonna train the kids. I'm gonna donate to the cause. I'm gonna volunteer some other way. But I think that's another very real thing that we don't talk about. And even though I've been arrested, I've been in all these kind of really some scary situations. When it came to my daughter, I was like, don't you go out there and get arrested. Because I know the toll that it takes. And my instinct is to protect my child, right? And so, yeah, I do think we have to be really cognizant of that. And some of the resources that we provide as support for folks in movement should also take that into account, the effects it has on your body. We need to infuse more healing work, more trauma work, because they glamorize it on TV. It is not fun being arrested. It is not fun being pushed in a huge crowd of people by the police. It is not fun being gassed, right? You may have stories to tell later, but in that moment, and them 6 months after, that thing will haunt you and will do something to you. And so I think we also have to be very clear and honest about that, not glamorize it and make it like a badge of honor for folks and not prepare them for what that will actually do to them. Like, that's really real.
Yeah, I was that person who did not care about my mental health until the moment when, right after I was released from jail, I found myself in a bleak reality, and I could not understand what's happening because nothing gave me pleasure. I was not motivated. I was still working. I was still doing my organizing job, and I was working an alternative media outlet that would provide independent news for Russian citizens. It was in 2014, but none of the work would give me any happiness. And then I had to admit to myself, I was 25 at the moment, that actually mental health matters. And I had to go to doctors, and they prescribed me antidepressants. And it's a longer conversation of whether we should not take antidepressants. But I think for a lot of activists, it's a common problem. We don't think about, we don't care about ourselves enough. Another problem that I personally encountered being a young activist, I was paying so much attention on my mind and on my actions, I would completely neglect my body. It did not exist. I would not exercise. I would not, do what I want. Lay down when I want. I would just be totally consumed by every project that I'm doing right now. And I thought, I have resources, and I'm not falling down, so it means that I still can work. So then, strangely enough, jail taught me how to get some pleasure, including bodily pleasures from life. And I really hope that you guys who listen to it, you don't have to go to jail to learn how to take care of your body and take care of your mental health. You can find better ways how to do it. Yeah, but prison is not fun. And yeah, so this I totally understand what you talk about, that people do glamorize it. So when I got out of jail, I felt so awkward because I actually was traumatized. I was like relieving my trauma in nightmares every day, and people treated me as a celebrity at the time. So I didn't feel like that at all. I felt like people talk with someone else who's behind my back, but not with me. So it was a really weird experience. So yeah, take care of yourself and take care of people around you. You are performing a really, really difficult job.
Excellent. There's another question, and it is, how can women more readily recognize and combat internalized sexism and the way it interferes in the way women perceive and treat each other? And related to that is, how should women resist patriarchal manipulation? And I love this question. I'm just going to expand it to beyond women, because I think all people need to learn, how to think about dominant culture and dominant society. So men can learn from that too, and non-binary folks. But I still think this is an incredible question. I'd love to hear you both answer it.
Yeah, I think about this idea of internalized sexism, or just, the thing that I hear, one of the things I hear a lot from folks, especially young people on college campus and stuff, is that, they ask me things like, don't you think that if all men would just change, that the world, we'd be rid of this problem, right? There'd be no need to if men would just stop and change. And I'm like, that is, and let me disabuse you of that notion now, right? Because we are, and I usually go back at them and ask them questions like, I said, you heard me say earlier that we have to dismantle rape culture because rape culture creates the space for violence to happen, right? And if you don't think you contribute to rape culture, then we'll never undo that. Like, think about how many times you've called a girl a slut randomly to your friends because she had on a certain thing, or she liked the guy, or you heard a rumor or whatever. It's like, that is the same as the guy who says the crude things when you walk by, right? This is not about what men have to do. And I think one of the real mistakes of this moment has been only engaging men from the perspective of harm doers and perpetrators, right? And not really taking a look at the way sexual violence is perpetrated by all people, that not just people who identify as women experience sexual violence. And we all have something, we have all contributed, no matter what position you take in this movement, to patriarchal society. And so I think that, to answer the question, that when you have that, if you have the wherewithal, the understanding to ask that question, then you have the ability to be intentional about doing something about it. I think part of it is that a lot of people just don't even have the presence of mind to understand that it is internalized. We've all been socialized in a sexist, patriarchal society, all of us. We've all been socialized to think in the binary and think about particular roles for particular people. There has to be a massive unlearning, a massive resocialization in order for us to see the kind of shift that we want. And that's not going to happen. I think, in some ways, for the older generation, it is incredibly difficult. But for those, the saying, if you know better, you do better. So if you know enough to ask that question, then you have to go out and seek the information that you need. There are books to read, people to talk to, podcasts to listen to, information, topics to be brought up to speed on. Be intentional, and then share that information. Start having those conversations in your inner circles. Start using words like internalized sexism and see what that sparks amongst your feminist friends. I just think that's the way we have to move.
And look at yourself. Yeah. I look within myself, and I have to admit that over years I had to really learn a lot of stuff and rework the way my psychology works, because it's impossible to live in society and not be affected by it. So there was a moment in my life when I was identifying myself as a feminist, but at the same time I was still treating other women as competitors, first of all. And there is a simple explanation for that. I mean, like for years, for thousands of years, we were dependent on the approval of men, and they were the only ones who would give us any resources that we may have, and they would easily take it away from us. So it makes sense that maybe at some point women were our competitors, but it doesn't have to be that way anymore. Like, we're our own people, and there is such a beauty that as I was growing up, I was opening my eyes on the beauty of sisterhood, and now to me it's the biggest treasure. So it's not just moral imperative. So there is joy in that as well, because the whole world will open up for you, and it will have much more colors than you used to have when you lived with this internalized sexism.
You two are so brilliant. I really wish we had all night to talk. But I want to thank you both for your energy and your time and just clarity and transparency and vulnerability. And I really felt the presence, even though we're in this digital environment. I really, really appreciate everything you two brought tonight. So I want to say thank you again for chatting with me and with the Baltimore Museum of Art. And thank you to everyone who tuned in as well. Oh, thank you. I'm just like, I've been taking notes the whole time, so I'm thrilled.
No, I mean you're a really great moderator. I love when moderators can listen to what's here, happening and kind of pivot and act and go deeper and know when to do that. So thank you. It makes it a great conversation.
It's my honor, like highlight of my week, my month, Okay, so this is not the end of our program. Everyone stay tuned because the three of us have actually selected short films that will screen momentarily, and they're all by Baltimore-based artists, which is really exciting, and they're all so talented. And I'm gonna hand it back over to Kim, who's gonna take it from here and let you know what's coming next.
Thank you, Jenna. I feel so lifted by this fantastic conversation between the three of you. Nadya dropped gems, but when Tarana said, my self-care is boundaries, that was a whole mood. And Jenna, you did a fabulous job moderating, so thank you all. So up next, we're gonna cap off the evening with a screening of 6 short films by a collection of Baltimore-based artists and visionaries, including Kyle Yearwood, Nia June, Pierre, Bennu, As They Lay, Nicoletta, Daríta Della Brown, and Nia Hampton. So these films are also featured in the BMA Screening Room, which is a video platform broadcasting the work of local video artists. You can find it at tomorrows.artbma.org. This initiative was launched last spring, and it's designed to highlight the work of local artists, galleries, and arts nonprofits, and also develop new platforms of visibility to ensure the long-term success of Baltimore's arts community.
Black Moses Barbie.
Oh no, I think we're
we'll
lost.
Never be free.
Hey kids, looking for freedom?
It's Harriet Tubman.
Moses.
On the other side of this tree you'll find a cave. Go through the cave, make a quick left, and you'll see a boat.
Okay.
Inside of that boat you'll see a pair of oars. Freedom oars!
Wow.
Paddle north and make your way to freedom.
Runaway Christy?
Yeah, Runaway Ken?
This is all kind of scary.
Freedom, true freedom, is daunting.
I know Runaway Ken, but
You have come this far, but you have to know you're ready.
you know she's been known to hold a gun on folks who hesitate.
I never ran my train off the track, and I never lost a passenger.
Getting in the cave of freedom. Black Moses Barbie comes complete with motivational freedom rifle. Freedom or sold separately.
What do you know of a black girl's country? Where the faucets bleed oceans, so we bathe in God and pray to our own reflections. A black girl's country, where the sky is an indigo quilt hemmed and sewn by our grandmother's tired hands. And we talk with language in our hands and trumpets in our throats, shamelessly loud, shouting our names into an eternal echo. And we smile and the sun bows to us. And with moonlit teeth and dimples deeper than Egyptian blood, we laugh. And every black girl's laugh is an anthem. A Nina, a Billy, a blues. A soft hum hissing, honey kissing baby hairs, every promise is a silk scarf tying itself into a crowd. And even our anger is so beautiful. In a black girl's country, an angry black girl sounds like 1,000 waterfalls rushing towards us to silence our storms, to wash our feet when we are tired from dancing. In a black girl's country, breasts and bellies and hips are kingdoms and temples and thrones, and fatherhood is fresh fruit at sunrise. Never fermented or beat, abused, mothers are becoming and born from soil, holding us up and down, opening our souls without fear. Finally, we are here. We are home.
Somebody sing a black girl song. She's been dead so long, closed in silence so long. Somebody sing a black girl song. Sing her infinite beauty. Let her be born in her black girl's country.
A new world. A free world. A new world. Imagine. Sing it with me. We're a happy family. I make what I owe, and I owe what I make. Won't you, babe, love it too?
for Marissa Alexander and Octavia Butler. Marissa Alexander, sentenced to 20 years, maybe 60, by a white supremacist judge in Florida as of March 2014. Octavia Butler, visionary sci-fi writer. And also for Marlene Pinnock, who was beat down by a white male CHP cop recently in California. What to tell our female children. Number 1, you are a natural part, a vital natural part of universal energy. You have a divine right to be here and anywhere else. You are loved, cherished, admired, and respected. You have a right to be safe, serene, and to know joy, peace, prosperity, health, well-being. We have a right to be. Tell this in multi-languaged tongues of fire, air, earth, water first. Number 2, then tell them, our children, tell them monsters do exist. Aberrated entities, unsubs of several species, will try to drain, devour, possess, and destroy you because they've got issues. Yes, they got problems that are not your problems. They are not your fault or responsibility. You have a right to be. Although they are good at camouflage and stealth, you can triumph. You will. Number 3, practice eternal joy-filled vigilance and dance. Dance through valleys, roads, boardrooms, congresses, schools, illiberal gatherings, courtrooms, bedrooms, cyberspace, outer space, aware and prepared. Number 4, you have a right to be anywhere you choose to be. Tell them not to call you girl. Tell them not to call you shawty or other appellation. Allow no one to touch your hair or any part of your anatomy without your permission. Proximity is not permission. We have a right to our personal space. Remind them and remember, you are a part of the natural divine order of the universe. And we are armed by the universe. Remember, remind them. The first shot was a warning. The next won't be.
Wow, those are really good. If you want to check them out again, they're available in the BMA Screening Room, tomorrows.artbma.org. So before we wrap up things for tonight, we have a final performance from JoJo Abbott. Tonight's program was generously sponsored by Suzanne F. Cohen and the Cohen Opportunity Fund. Thank you so much for your support. Special thanks again to our amazing guests, Tarana Burke, Nadya Tolokonnikova, and Jenna Wortham for delivering such an inspiring conversation. I got a lot out of it. I'm sure you did too. I'm your host, Kim Brown. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Have a great night. JoJo Abbott, take us away.
The Negro still is not free.
This decade is the decade of African independence.
I have a dream.
Blackness, black power.
I have a dream.
As far as Africa is concerned, music cannot be for enjoyment. Music has to be for revolution.
Pushing them to identify with black culture.
I have a dream.
It's like a new awareness among black people that their own physical appearance is beautiful.
Think about it, do something about it.
To me, we are the most beautiful creatures in the whole world, outside and inside.
So let freedom ring.
And to me, we have a culture that is surpassed by no other civilization.
Forward then to independence now. Tomorrow, the United States of Africa.
This is what compels me to compel, and I will do it by whatever means necessary.
Free at last. Free at last. Thanks for the money.
Libby, laba, laba. I knew I could never trust you. That's true, you know it too. This feet ain't new. You been new. Logo, you're still the way we waste. I connect them too. They report to me, I give them life. I'm doing more God, yeah. Got my eyes wide shut. Yeah, I run up in the dark. I can see through you. Line straight to your teeth. When y'all back, you got my dope. You already know. I'm going in on sight. You know the old school vibe. I ain't with the fish. Just give me my combat train. I'm the original. The original. I'm the original mother. The original. The original. The original mother. The original. The original. I'm the original mother. The original. The original. The original mother. The original. Original mother, yeah. The earth, the wind, the skies. The earth, the wind, the skies. Our mother, the beginning of creation. Our mother, the fearless one. Our mother, the original mother. I'm the original. Born of kings and queens. Yes, my blood runs deep, and my squad's real lit. Power to the God within your roar. Born of a conquering lion, the great I am, the all-seeing eye, the all-knowing mind, divine, feminine force. Africa's the source, the great mother born. She must be restored, even if by force. As she comes home along my sea, your spirit rise to earth. Wipe away the hurt, remind us our worth. Restore power to the people, great mother. The original, the original, the original mother. The original, the original, the original mother. The original, the original, original mother. The original mother. The original, the original, 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 the original. made in the image of the Most High. Mother, yeah. Yes, thank you so much for hanging out with me and my crew. I hope you feel energized, loved, warm, and present, knowing that you are capable of all things. There's nothing in the way. Despite circumstance and what lies in front of you, you have the power to change your reality. So power to the people, to the fearless and the brave, to those who allow themselves to feel all things and to be all things, who are fluid, who are present, who are accountable, who are filled with love and grace and compassion for one another. Power to the people. Power to those who march for something they believe in. Power to the people who stand in the gap for others who can't rise for themselves. Power to those who stand as allies in this movement for Black liberation globally. Power to you for being present. Power to the Baltimore Museum of Arts. Power to the artists all over the world. Power to each and every living and non-living thing. Power to the God within.